Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. It is an amazing and exciting evening for us here at Pause for the Truth because we are celebrating 100, 100 episodes. And this show cannot happen, and I am so blessed to be a part of an amazing trio that have worked to put Pause for the Truth together. Of course, starting with co-host Dr. Rogers Kane. How are you doing this evening, Dr. Kane?
I'm absolutely fine. I feel great. I'm just hoping this aged brain can keep up with our 100th episode. I got to learn to count to 100 first, but okay.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Also joining us, you used to know him as our behind the scenes guy, but you see he cleaned up very well and come from behind the scenes as our co-host. But more importantly, he's the guy that helps to put our show out in the universe. None other than our technology expert engineer. Uh, I call him Call Tyrone, but Tyrone Jackson. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
I'm doing wonderful, wonderful, Miss Charlie. It's a beautiful day in Jacksonville, Florida, and I'm just glad to be here.
Absolutely. Tyrone and Dr. Kane, I think back 2 years ago when or more rather, when we talked about doing the podcast, Dr. Kane and I go way back in terms of working together, our passion for health and public health, of course, and always, doing our part in the community to educate folks. So we decided to use this platform or create rather a platform broader than us getting on the phone or having a conversation with a few folks, but rather bring experts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation, as well as other experts to join us to talk about hot topics that we feel are very relevant in our community. For example, Dr. Kane and I were talking just before the show about climate change, how, we all know how hot it's been. And if you don't think climate change is real, that's a great invitation. Couldn't give you any other awareness of that happening than the scorching temperatures that have been happening, excuse me, all over. But we're just so pleased that many of you have decided to tune in with us every Tuesday as we have brought, thought provoking guests on to share their knowledge and expertise and hopefully information that you can share. We want you to pay it forward. In other words, don't just keep it to yourself. Whatever knowledge and information that you learn, we want you to pay it forward and share it with others. Tonight, our technology expert, he decided to get fancy on us and go back and look at some of our favorite episodes. So, Tyrone, how about I take it away, let you take it away, or Dr. Kane, would you like to say a few words before Tyrone gets started?
The only thing I want to say is that we did early on a show on climate change, and we've been talking for the past few weeks to a month or more about doing another show. And I don't think that there's anything more apropos at this moment in time for us to revisit that subject. So we're looking at bringing hopefully the next show we can bring the topic back about climate change, especially as it relates to our health and the health of our community.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Tyrone, how about you? What are your thoughts or feelings about what we've been doing and then if you rather hold that till later and you just go ahead and get into the past episodes, I'll let you have.
Well, what I like to do is just say, it has truly been a pleasure working with both Miss Jocelyn and Dr. Kane. And I think it's important for our viewers and our listeners to understand that a show that has had these many episodes, and it comes on every week on Tuesday. So now that means it doesn't matter how busy of a week Dr. Kane has or how many projects Miss Jocelyn is juggling that week. We have to find time to put together a topic, do research, and oftentimes some of the more challenges reach out to individuals to have them to be a guest on the show. So as we go through this today, we're going to talk about some of the shows that each of us have really learned from, enjoyed, things of that nature. And as I work through the technical lens here, we're going to try to get some of those shows shown in part, some of the best features of that. I'm still working with that. I don't want to be the behind the scenes guy who says, well, we're having technical issues. But technology has a way of always pushing the boundaries. Okay. So I'm going to turn it back over to Miss Jocelyn. I tell you one thing that I am very excited about, Miss Jocelyn, and that is the decision we've made to start featuring a history fact. Now, some of you are going to say a Black history fact. As I looked at it, it is actually a history fact that's going to have Black people in it.
That's exactly it.
So that's one of the things that we're truly, truly looking forward to. And so we'll do that today as well. And we're going to talk about some of the beautiful things that we have coming up for our viewers, ways to interact with us quicker, ways to get your ideas and thoughts to us quicker. So I just want you to stay tuned, hold on, and get ready to enjoy this 100th show with us.
Thank you, Tyrone. And while you are queuing up for our preview of past shows, I just want to talk to you for a second, Dr. Kane. Why did you think that it was important for us to start this platform? Because one thing that people don't know is that we are all volunteers, right? So the investment of this, quite frankly, comes from all of us volunteering our time because we felt it was important to share, information and knowledge about topics that could benefit families. So, Dr. Kane, why do you have a passion for doing this?
Before I state my passion, what I would like to also state is that not only are we volunteers of our time, but we're all volunteers of our monies. One, time is money, but two, actual funds that we put into the program. We felt to go on ahead and put those monies into the program because it's very important. I felt, and you guys concurred, that the community needs to be aware of what other discussions that go on within the community. And we wanted to bring forth unedited information, okay, that and pretty much because we're live, information is not edited. Maybe Tyrone tried to make me look a little better without the shiny forehead and stuff like that. However, he ain't did a good job at it, but he did better with other people. I think it's the person behind the person in front of the camera, not so much the person behind the camera. But what we really felt was important was to get the message out to the community. At the time especially at the time we started it, COVID was running rampant. There was all kind of ideas out there, misconceptions, misperceptions, misstatements. The whole thing that I guess how Mr. Trump sometimes do things, putting out all these false statements about COVID. And we wanted to get the truth as best as we knew it at the time. And we brought in experts, national experts, local experts, especially because it's fine to hear national experts say some things, but people recognize some of their doctors, some of their friends and families, and people were able to relate to them because they knew them and they knew how to trust them. We also morphed into that because we knew COVID was not going to be COVID forever, which we're happy that we weren't going to be under that kind of emergency circumstance with COVID forever. But we began to morph into that other health issues as it relates to our community, our state, our nation, and the world. And so we wanted to make it an educational channel, not just a traditional ones where we want to talk about only high blood pressure, only diabetes, or only about chronic kidney disease, but an entire kaleidoscope of information about things that were important to our community. We went down some of the top 10 morbidity and mortality issues that concerns especially Black community, but we never left out the entire community because we are part of the entire community. And then it also included and encompassed mental health, because your physical health will affect your mental health and vice versa. So, and then things that affect your mental health, as in racism and other things that go on within our school system, our educational system, the climate change, the whole 9 yards. We felt that we have to bring forth that to our community. So with that being said, I just wanted to let people know how this all got started. And because you guys came up with the great ideas that you had, and I just was kind of, okay, it sounds good to me, and go from there.
Well, let me say, anybody who knows Dr. Kane know that it wasn't that, okay, that's all right with me. It was a lot more discussion than that. And that's one of the beautiful things about what we've created at Pause for the Truth, a honest exchange of information. We talk about things as a team. We come up with decisions about how to move forward as a team with a simple goal in mind of educating the community about things that are very important. And that is the secret to the success. And it brings us to this 100 show.
And thank you, Tyrone. And one thing that we've done that I like is given our audience an opportunity to call in and also to post their questions. As a matter of fact, when I sent the flyer out, I even told some folks, if you have any questions, or if you have a favorite podcast that you'd like that you remember, then post a comment right now. Let us know what your favorite podcast topic is. Hopefully you do have a favorite. If you don't, we'll take that as meaning you enjoyed all the podcasts, because we sure did. One thing that I've learned is, although some people are talkative off camera, they get very shy on camera, and you have to kind of pull it out of them, to get them going. And some topics, quite frankly, are also, they're tough conversations to have. But as Dr. Kane and Tyrone said, we try to bring the truth here, and hopefully give you a perspective that will make you think and help make informed decisions. As Dr. Kane even mentioned with COVID, we brought the experts to help you make informed decisions. Tyrone, I can ramble on. So are you ready to bring up the slideshow yet?
Well, I've got some things that that I do want to bring up. So I think what I'd like to do first, if it's okay with you guys, is to go ahead and let's bring out our history moment. And with that, and from there, we can very easily go to our favorite shows. So if that's okay with everybody, that's how we'll go next. Okay. So what I did is I looked up some information, and we created a Black History Moment. And what I did was I asked Dr. Kane and Ms. Jocelyn to just kind of look at some of the people who are relevant in history today. Growing up in school, there were top 5, maybe 10 African Americans that they talked about with regards to Black history. And over my life, I've continued to hear those names. Well, what I've discovered, and one of the beautiful things of this show, is that Black history and history is being made each and every day. There are people who are acquiring and doing things that are truly beautiful in our communities and around the world. And so we've got a couple of those. The one that Dr. Kane and Ms. Jocelyn both agreed on was...
Drum roll.
Drum roll, please.
Noah Harris. Yes.
Noah Harris. Now, let's start by noticing this gentleman is only 21 years old. All right, so So in some circles, this wouldn't be considered Black history being made. But yes, true enough, we're talking about he's the first Black man to be a student body president at Harvard. Harvard being one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, unless you're a Yale guy. So awesome, awesome, awesome. And this is one of the things that we want to be able to bring to our listeners, bring to our viewers, a pinpoint in time where we can look at individuals who are currently doing things in history. Now, each show going forward, we're going to have one, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure it is in line with the topic that we have for today. But this is the 100th episode, and because we couldn't make up our mind, all of us agree on one thing, then I have a few other ones to show as well. All right. So
now, Tyrone, can I make a quick statement? And that
yes,
is that the thing that's really relevant to that and today and that we've talked about, it's funny how Harvard and some of those other institutions were one that the Supreme Court referenced in terms of getting rid of affirmative action and how much of white America try to say that we're just given things because we're Black. He actually earned it. He earned the respect of his colleagues within that institution because that is a process that you're voted in and not named to.
Right, absolutely. This has nothing to do with the faculty. It has nothing to do with the policies created by the institution that greases the wheels. This individual is voted in by the student body. And so I think it's very paramount that we stop and take a look at this here for what it is. And what I hope to happen is there be many more opportunities for young Black men, young Black women to become and follow his lead. So awesome, awesome. And what I say is hats off to Noah.
Yes,
now,
indeed.
Did you have some, Ms. Johnson? Go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you.
All right. So now the next one I had is for all of us Marvel fans. So if you are a fan of the heroes and Marvel comics, then I found this to be very, very exciting for me because I did not know that this Nia DaCosta at 31 is the first Black woman to direct a Marvel film. All right, so when you look at the highest grossing films over the last 20 years, Marvel continues to year after year after year be able to produce that. So in all of its years to have on the Marvel set the first Black director, I was very, very impressed. And I thought it noteworthy that we bring and put that forth. It's important for our viewers to know and to understand that there are African Americans in all walks of life making strides and achievements. Now, the last two we're talking about are young individuals. I mean, Nia, she's barely a millennial. And then Noah is a Generation Z. So we've had conversations on our show about generational differences and about the generations. And it's important that we note that these individuals have not let any of those things stop them, not their color, not their age, not their upbringing, anything. They've gone after what it is they wanted. And it's a beautiful, beautiful situation. It teaches everyone that comes behind them that there's opportunity available.
Yes,
all right.
Indeed.
So here we go again. Now, if you are not a Marvel fan, all right, let's talk football. I mean, you know, one of our nation's most favorite pastimes. And we have Jason Wright at 38 is the first Black president of the National Football League. Now, if you look at the teams, he's definitely not the first Black to play He's definitely not the only black, but to be in 2023, and this is the first time we have an individual who has acquired and made it to this status is, in my opinion, definitely noteworthy. All right. So all of you football fans understand that there is life after being a quarterback. There's life after being a tailback. There's life after getting beat up. There's life in the upper echelons of the sports. So our young listeners and viewers and parents of them, now we have more to help inspire our children to do and to become.
And he definitely did this in the face of having, I mean, he's a running back. And so a lot of times you have to worry about post-concussion syndrome in these individuals. He still accomplished what he's accomplishing even after 7 years as a running back for the Falcons. That's tremendous.
And I have one more. Okay. And then we have Mrs. Jones, 39, NBC president, first executive to run a major television news network. Now, it doesn't take much for us to look at the news and to say that the news appears to be slanted away from our neighborhoods. And it's always amazing to me how whenever they interview someone, they found the most Ebonic speaking individual they can find. But you got to understand that those decisions are made at the higher levels. And it's important that we understand that until you get a seat at the table where decisions are made, changes can't be made as a whole to benefit any group, any individual. So in having seen this young lady in there, I was very, very excited to be able to pull her up. Now, one of the things that I know in this here, what we've done is now we have the news, we have sports, we have entertainment in the way of Marvel. And it's just amazing how we're continuing to grow and we're branching out all avenues of that are available to us. This is a message that we want to teach the youth that are coming up. I had a conversation earlier today that really was interesting as we talked about whether or not the new generation has critical thinking abilities, or whether or not they've been dormanted, or whether or not they're just disappeared altogether. And what came out of it is that the ability to create and think on your feet is based on what is put before you. So can we expect the generation of today to have critical thinking skills like we have or had when they have no experiences like what we have or had?
That's a hard question to answer. What we have to do is make sure we educate that generation of our kids as to what we did experience, what their grandparents, great-grandparents, all of the information that they did experience. But before I get off of this, I'm really, she's in the entertainment industry. You mentioned that. And even though it's MSNBC, and which I have no problems with MSNBC, and, the accomplishment of being the first Black executive to run a major news network. But that's not her forte. Look at what this woman did. She helped develop that first the vaccine by Moderna for COVID-19. Brilliant. Okay, but what she did.
Dr. Kane, we have the folks mixed up. The writing is about Dr. Corbett, but the picture is was Miss Jones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The picture
so that was
okay. So all right. Well, yeah. Even with Corbett, I'm looking at, because I don't know what they look like, but it's just brilliant that a 35-year-old immunologist, because remember that's what started our show, was the whole COVID vaccine, and I don't remember seeing her face what it looked like. There she's go right
There
there.
she is right there.
A very young lady, and that is just, and she helped save in my opinion, helped save the world. Even though there was a lot of death with COVID, this woman did some tremendous, made a tremendous accomplishment, and that's why I wanted to highlight about her healthcare accomplishment.
Mhm.
I guess especially since I'm a physician, but I wanted to highlight that more so than I did about being when I was confused as to what else she did as far as being the MSNBC first Black director or executive to run MSNBC. I'm really impressed with Miss Corbett.
Awesome.
And I like that we are introduced or have introduced launched tonight that we are going to pause for the truth of our history minute. I love that, Tyrone. And the bottom line is we want to pause to acknowledge history makers in our community, because if and we've talked about it, so and it's been national news here in Florida. Unfortunately, there's a part of African American history that's not being taught in schools. So we decided through this platform that we would like to feature and tell our own stories, quite frankly. One of our guests in the past, Miss Anita Spencer, shared with us we should tell our own stories and not wait for anyone else to tell it, because we're going to tell it right and truthful, right? But we also need to chronicle what's happening in our own lives. Many of our relatives and friends are doing things on a day-to-day basis, but they go unnoticed, which is okay with them because they're just doing the work. But keep a log of their stories, because that's the type of information that we want to the stories we want you to tell in your family tree. A lot of people have family reunions. Tell your Black history moment within, or your family moment history, as you are sharing or doing your family reunion activities, because how else, in other words, sometimes it may be the only way that your children and grandchildren will know by the stories that you share with them. But you can see these folks on the screen, some noteworthy. I remember I did a story. I was doing a volunteering with some youth, and all of us dressed up as a famous person, and I dressed up as Bessie Coleman. She was an aviator,
Yes.
flying, and I was just so shocked to hear about it. Like, what? Never heard. It just so happened we were all doing our homework, and I just stumbled upon her and was just amazed. And Muhammad Ali, Frederick Douglass, and to see even Mae Jemison, she's still around. Mark Dean still around. These are noteworthy people. Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett, I happened to be on a panel, not on a panel, well, yeah, I was, where I got to, as she was on the panel, and a few of us from the community, folks that are doing things in the COVID arena, I was invited to be one of 3 people who got an opportunity to ask her a question. So listen, you would have thought that I had won $1 million that night. I was just so impressed and proud to be in a virtual space, because we were all virtual at that time, to be able to ask Dr. Corbett a question, and just to be in that same space with her. Tyrone, I don't want to ramble again. Are you ready to?
So what question did you ask her? Do you remember what you asked her?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't remember. It was obviously something COVID related, but I don't remember.
All right, then. So I think what we want to do, Ms. Johnson, we want to move to the episodes that each of us thought had a special moment for us. So who wants to be first?
Jocelyn.
Well, nothing against any other guests who are not listed on here, but these were some special moments for me throughout the past 2 years. Prostate cancer and the work that I've been doing with men's health have been very important to me. So when we had Dr. Williams and some other folks on to talk about what every man needs to know about prostate cancer, that was important. Black youth in crisis. I don't need to say anything else about that, right? We all know that youth, unfortunately, are having some troubling times, dealing with some mental health issues. I hear at least once a week of a Black youth who have attempted or who committed suicide. So it's a conversation we needed to have. How to build and protect wealth in your family. What can we say about that? Many people will say, "Well, I can't save." Well, yeah, if we really look at the money that we have, even if you save $1 a week or $1 a month, that's a saving. Put it in a bank somewhere. When I was growing up, I literally had a piggy bank. As a matter of fact, I can run to my room and show you my bank now. But just put money. My brother, one thing that he does is when he pays, buys things and he pays cash, he doesn't give the coins. Say if it's $1.15, he'll just give $2 and he'll put all the coins at the end of the day in a bank. And at the end of the year, he would have thousands of dollars. So that's just another easy way to save. Are you at risk for colorectal cancer? When Chadwick Boseman died, that brought a lot of attention to colorectal cancer. And of course, we had Dr. Rawls and others on, Linda Brown, talking about what we can do to lower our risk and, more importantly, the screenings that we can take. Black churches respond to hunger, a paradigm shift. Churches are open a couple of days a week. Well, I have the privilege of working with the Black Church Food Security Network and others, good friend Lorene Husband, and we're working with churches to show what they can do to respond to hunger, growing gardens, community gardens, and doing some composting, other things. How to move people to stable housing. Need we say any more? Can you imagine being out in the heat now as an unhoused person? Alvin Barlow is doing some great work in that space. American history, tell the truth. We all already talked about that tonight by featuring some notable history makers in our lives. Health and healthcare. Our very own new mayor here in Jacksonville, Donna Deegan. I think that was one of our more popular shows. She was campaigning during that time, so folks were, tuning in to hear more about her and to hear her platform. And fortunately, they believed her, and she's now the mayor here in Jacksonville. Heart disease and hypertension, the dynamic duo couple. They were absolutely amazing, funny, and if you have to tune into that episode, they were amazing. And recognizing mental illness, again, is something that we don't talk about. And we had, a couple of folks on. Let's see, we had Merlin Baker and Dr. Richmond Wynn on talking about recognizing mental illness. So these are my top 10, but I could literally go on and on about some other great shows that we've had and featured over the past 100 episodes.
Right. And one of the things I will say is one of the shows that by statistics and data was one of our better shows in terms of re-downloads was how to move people into stable housing. We had an outstanding show with Minister Barlow, and his passion was obvious in everything that he explained to us, and the process that he was talking was just so, and as I remember, so simple. We're giving away thousands of millions of dollars to people to do business in the city of Jacksonville, and his proposal, if you remember, was to just take 5 cents from each one of the dollars and put it toward affordable housing.
Yep.
And
so simple, doesn't it?
So that was, for me, that's something that I remember very, very strongly. And you said Black Youth in Crisis. And it is obvious the title, very little needs to be said. But that is another show that had outstanding viewership. We say the word, we listen to the title, but there's no understating the challenge that's set before us as adults as we look to help bridge our youth out of crisis. So there are a lot of things that's going on. I don't know if either of you had an opportunity to see the video of what happened in Montgomery, Alabama.
Who didn't?
Yeah, I did. And the thing, by the way, I wanted to make about the Black Youth in Crisis episode is that it led to more conversation about gangs. You know, sometimes when people are not as connected to their families as they like to be, we think that people are close with families. However, they get a different closeness with members of gangs and join gangs, and unfortunately it leads to criminal behavior. And so we were fortunate to have the Burtons on to help us in that statement, Lakeisha and Greg Burton, to talk about, you know, that space, and Pastor Corey Neal. So O'Neill, just some great folks to bring some things to light. But that ignorant situation, that was just totally, I shouldn't say ignorant, that was totally out of hand. That gentleman was just trying to do his job and was attacked. I call it by a mob, because if the tables had been turned, it would have been a mob, is how the folks would have been referred to. So that's what I'm going to call it. He was attacked by a mob by simply asking them to allow him to do his job. And the folks who were not a part of that crew, they just saw a man being beat up and they jumped in.
Right. Now, one of the things that is trending with regards to the millennials is the participation of the women. And they're actually started to look back. And I was looking at some of the chatter on Twitter and some of the other social media feeds. And what they're saying is that, is it not interesting that when you look back in our history of the atrocities that have been perpetrated on blacks by whites, that they appear to have erased the women out of it, the white women out of it? And that is interesting. There were posts where you'll have pictures of black men being hung, and what they would show up front is a man with a rifle holding his son's hand, and they would then fuzz out the picture of all the women who stood there idly by and participated. So there has been an asserted effort to make sure to whitewash that part of the story. But here on the video that was showed yesterday, they were just as culpable and just as involved in the fiascos as anyone else.
Well, that was the white male trying to protect white women, is what you're referring to historically. You know, while demonizing black women, calling them whatever they wanted to call them, but they were the backbone of this country for a long time. I granted that black men worked hard, they were sodomized and some of everything else that happened to them. But black women also suffered as much as black men, but they also made the master rich, because they will be able to bring more slaves to his plantation, because they gave birth to other black to black babies, which the way that slavery was written and set up that made it different from indentured servants was that the beholding that the black women had to the master was passed on to any children that they had. And so, but they're the ones, they not only did they have these babies to make these white men rich, but they also sought them for the pleasure that they wanted to have on black women. And in addition, they still got out there, worked the fields, worked their homes, took care of their women and their children, fed their children, even from their own breast. So, you know, own breast milk, because their own mothers were not in a hurry to feed their own children. That was, you know, but that's not what the picture that they presented historically, as we all know. We know it's a bunch of BS. But our thing is that they are intentional at trying to erase that history. And what we have to do, as you guys said earlier, is make sure that our children, our family members are aware of that history. Not because we want to point a finger at them and say what you did to us, but to make sure that they are aware that history can repeat itself, and a lot of time does. So, and they're trying to do that right now. They say take our country back, it's back to win. Okay, so we need to be I think that was a very apropos point that you guys just made in terms of that you made, Mr. Jackson, about them protecting the white women, but how they were dogmatic in demonizing black women.
Absolutely, and I think I want is important for our listeners and viewers to know that we're not on purposely trying to have a conversation that points the finger. I think you just said it, Dr. Kane. All right, but the evidence is what the evidence is.
History is what it is.
Right, and what we wanted to accomplish with regards to Pause for the Truth was just what the title says, to pause for the truth, the pause for the truth in unfair treatment in healthcare, the pause for the truth in the disparity in certain illness that are predominant in our communities, to pause for the truth related to the type of foods that we make the decisions to put into our body, to pause for the truth with regards to a wide variety of information that we wanted to have to give to people to take back to their families, to talk around with their friends, so that information becomes power. Okay, and so not in pointing finger avenue at all. All right, Dr. Kane, you ready to go for your 10? Or you have me go?
Yeah, if I can remember them. Well, as both of you guys know, I'm not good with names, so you guys can help me out with remembering those guests. But I did because, and this is the subject matter we're talking about right now, the talk that Black parents have with their children. You know, that wasn't. I'm not saying that that's number one. I didn't have it in particular order, but I also that was just a conversation that I felt we all needed to have. That we all felt that we needed to have with our audience, and we will invite white listeners that were listening to our show. We wanted to get them to understand what we have to do to help protect our children. And so I really enjoyed that show. And by the way, you know, Ms. Turner and I overlap with a whole lot of our favorite shows. And that's why I wanted her to go first, because you know, when she put up first 10 in, I said, well, I can't put the same 10 in. So let me find something.
Well, what I will say,
in which to do. Put that list back up. I'm not seeing it right now. Okay. And, you know, and what's the consequences of Roe versus Wade, reversing Roe versus Wade? We talked about that early on because we anticipated that may be a real happening. You know, we in some parts we talked about why that was expected to happen, and I think Dr. Herman Miller was on that show, and Dr. Miller was very candid about how he felt, as well as I forgot another young lady's name that was with Planned Parenthood. I think they were the ones on the show, but we wanted to talk about that, and true to form, here we are. You know, maybe show number 92, 3 or whatever, whatever number of weeks later, what happened? The Supreme Court overturned it, Roe versus Wade. Ms. Turner and I we're always concerned about obesity and being overweight and the health effects that it had. And when we talk with our in-house guru as far as dietetics are concerned, our favorite dietitian, Linda, she always brings these very salient points about and something that's not so obvious but probably should be, about how we're eating and what we're eating and how it affects our health. And so we really wanted to get into that, because that was what you eat is a corridor into a whole bunch of your health related issues. Anything from cancer, anything from diabetes, high blood pressure, as we saw when we talked with our two favorite couples with hypertension and chronic kidney disease. You know, all of that kind of led up into the other discussions we had regarding our health. And then we talked again about Black history. and the young lady and her husband that was also there. Ms. Turner, you can help me out with names better than I can, but they also brought forth the need for us, as you said earlier, to discuss with our families
Anita
about,
and Carlos Spencer.
yes, to
Yes.
discuss with our families about the role that not only just the obvious historical facts that we have, but the not so obvious. We all can appreciate the Malcolm X's, the Martin Luther King, the Angela Davises of the world, because they were the ones that were most publicized for one
Bigger than
reason
life.
or another, and much of it because they hated them, but also because they put their lives out there on the line by being very public with what they said. But we are, as you said earlier, Ms. Turner, we don't educate our children that what role our own parents and grandparents play, and what it is that your father accomplished early on in life, that he didn't want to stand around and do one of these numbers and pat himself on the shoulder about anything, an accomplishment that you accomplished over at the health department in the many years that you served there. Very selflessness, the selflessness that you demonstrated in terms of when your job ended at 5, you still worked to 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And I know that because I was there with you on many of those occasions. So people don't really recognize the earnest effort that many of the community that are not as popular on social media, not as popular in the history book, but it's their own family members, the role that they played in establishing Black history. So the silence doesn't rob us of our Black history, can be interpreted in many ways. And one of them is, does the silence about our family members rob us of what your forefathers did, your immediate forefathers did to make things happen? The benefits of funeral pre-planning. I thought that was very important because the young man came on. He gave us some real good lessons. And I remember when we brought that subject and got funerals. It's like, look, you don't know how much these people are going around robbing Black folks and taking all this money, and that you just putting in the ground. Yeah, we want to honor our family members, but you don't need to take $10,000 and bury it and put it in the ground. Honor them in some other way, but definitely honor them before they get to the ground. Honor them while they're still alive, and that's one of the things we.
Let me say something on that real quick. Have you guys heard that you do not have to buy your casket from a funeral home? There are discount and wholesale casket sellers online, and their price is more than 60, sometimes 70% less the cost they're selling them in funeral homes.
Yeah. And sometimes you just rent them anyway. I tell my wife, look, I don't care what you do with it. When I'm done with this body, you can do whatever you want with it. You can throw it out in the backyard for all I care. They might put you in jail, but I have no other use for it. What am I gonna do with it?
Awesome.
At that point, so and I didn't want her to waste a whole lot of money. Take that money and do something for that homeless woman, or child, or family that really need to make sure that they're not planning a funeral the following week after mine. If it can make a difference, give that to them. I want to be honored before I die. Okay. And a lot of times I see that with my family and my kids when they show me some appreciation about and especially when they show their mother appreciation about the sacrifices that she's done for them. One of the big things, we have multiple episodes on voting. We all had commentary on why the hell we ain't voting. What have we accomplished by not voting? What are we saying to ourselves when we just want to complain about what they're not doing for us, when you're not doing anything for yourself, when you don't go out and vote? That tended to, I think that irked all three of us, and still does, for those individuals who feel like their vote don't count. Donald Trump won Georgia. How many votes did he say? Look, I need 12,000 and so vote, and so on and so on and so on. And he was begging for that. And, and you could have been, if you lived in Georgia, you could have been one of those 12,000 that by not voting, he only needed that 12,000 and something. But if you did vote, you can add 1 plus to that 12,000 that he may not.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Recognizing mental illness, I think, Ms. Turner, you talked about that earlier. That is a significant concern for us because we do relate mental illness to our physical illness as well. You know, they come hand in hand. I think we separate the two mainly so that we can identify what a particular medical what's the word I'm looking for, good as I know it, what particular medical entity needs to treat it, what particular specialty needs to treat it. But it's hard to separate the physical and mental illness from each other because one can cause the other, or vice versa. Here we go back to the affirmative action again. Okay, that was significant for us because it impacts not only our kids in terms of getting education, but as an example, I think we mentioned it during the broadcast. We mentioned about how it affects our the number of doctors that we may have available. I talked about how it played a role with me being able to become a physician in a time in which I was turned down by some of the same medical schools. I wind up some of the same schools. I wind up going to their residency program. When I applied to go to medical school at University of Florida, it was a flat out denial. Okay. But after I finished and getting my education at one of our most respected institutions, medicine, I wound up being chief resident at University of Florida. So it's, being you talk about affirmative action, and affirmative action had its role because of the impact that it leaves our community in terms of perpetuating the no education within families. I was one of the first people in my family to become a physician, and it's not about this. It's about having the opportunity to just prove that it can be done. And all three of us on this broadcast experience the same thing because we're in that age group. That it made a huge difference, and even though there may be white rage, it's not because affirmative action failed. The white rage is about affirmative action succeeding in terms of what it was trying to do. It produced leaders like you two guys and what you guys do every day in terms of going out there and trying to promote to the rest of our community the need for them to get their education, whichever it may be. It doesn't all have to be everybody go to college, but at least be educated in terms of what goes on as far as it relates to how to manage your money, how to be, as Ms. Turner said, how just to be aware of where you stand in terms of your estate planning and so on and so on and so on. So, and then part two, just kind of, it was necessary because we wanted to come up and speak to what we can do now that the Supreme Court has put in place affirmative action. What can we do to help the rest of our community to make sure our dream of having Black doctors and nurses and healthcare educators, executives, all that is not forestalled simply because they think that the only reason we got that far was affirmative action. It just gave us an opportunity to be able to step out and show what we can do. And we took it and ran with it. And that's where the white rage is coming from at this moment in time.
And those shows that you mentioned there are a couple of things that I remember distinctly. And when you're talking about Miss Anita and her husband, they was on, and we were talking about, does the silence rob us? And she asked a simple question. And I remember the look on Miss Jocelyn's face and the conversation that we had after that. And that was, do you currently have pictures of your family so that your children can see and that conversation can be had? Now, at that point in time, I tell you, I did not, and I felt bad as I listened to the show, and I set out on a journey to fix that. Even though my children are out of the home now, they do come back and visit with great regularity, and we want to make sure that that is happening. Another thing was often Miss Jocelyn, who is very, very excellent at what she does, and she made some confessions with regards to something that happened to her. And for me, that was a moving moment because all the times we've been on the show and all the subjects that we had, she had never made a similar confession. If she wants to go over that again, that's up to her. But I'm only speaking of how it impacted me as I'm on the show and I'm listening to this here. So the point here is that what we've discovered is that oftentimes we bring on professionals within the field of the subject, and we sit back and learn as well. If I had a nickel for each time I've heard one of us confess that, I was a good show because I learned this, I did not know this, and it continues to grow on. That's one of the things that powers the show and continues to give us the ability to do what it is that we do. Okay. And there's a lot of conversation and levity that we have as we kid one another back and forth on these here topics. I thought when we first were going to do this show, I thought, what we ought to do is have a showing of what we talk about before we come up with a show. Now, you're talking about some interesting conversations and some dialogue. I think that would be very interesting for our viewers to hear. The only challenge with is the conversation is not as professional as what you hear when we come on the show to bring you our podcast. All right, Ms. Johnson, you got anything for us?
No, I want to see your list.
All right, so my list is very close to everyone else's list. My first one, and one that wasn't mentioned, let's talk about marijuana. So, marijuana is in every, it's been around for a long time. And every generation has a different thought, belief, and understanding of it. And it's one of those taboo forgetting conversations. We all know someone who's doing it. There's some people who watch and listen to the show right now who's doing it. But no one was willing to say anything. And the information that came out about CBDs and the new derivatives of marijuana and what's going on, I thought was just very, very informative. I've had some insightful conversation with friends and colleagues because of that show. Okay.
And I was really, Tyrone, it's funny. I took it off. I said, I think Tyrone might want to do this one because he found that to be very interesting when we talked at it. So I backed off that one, but I enjoyed that show as well.
All right. And then Ms. Johnson, you mentioned the Black church's response to U.S. hunger. And then we had the individuals on, they invited us out to a farm raising. And I went out, I got my hands in the dirt, and I felt the beauty of exactly what we're talking about. Not only are we talking and giving you information, but we're giving you information that gives you an opportunity to get involved in the community. There are food deserts, blight areas throughout Jacksonville. And we have the Black churches who have formed together in the coalition to be able to address some of those. Can they address them all? No. But it is a sure thing that what they're doing is far better than us sitting back waiting on someone else. Okay. Now, Dr. Kane, I'm sure I mentioned you had this one on the talk Black parents have with their children. Being a father of 2 boys, there was a lot of quality information that came out of that episode. There were things that were spoke of in the sense of the consideration of whether or not to have the conversation. At what age do we have the conversation? And in that conversation, how candid can we be, and based on the age of your children? Just to me, that was very, very, very informative. Now, I then took that information again. At this time, my boys are gone, and made sure that they are prepared to have that conversation with their sons. See, I'm the father of 3 children, and each of my 3 children have one boy. So therefore, it is important that this information gets passed on. You know, I don't think either one of you mentioned healing the wounds of racial stress and trauma. Growing up in America as a Black person, it is obvious that we've dealt with more stress and trauma than others. The secret sauce is that in some way we've always found a way to move forward. Well, what this show enlightened us to is moving forward. It's not always healing. Moving forward is a necessity for life, but yet healing is a recovering and renewing of heart and spirit to be able to do better. So I really, really found some very interesting golden nuggets from that show. It's one that I've watched on several occasions. Equal justice in criminal sentencing. Now, we had Reverend Barlow on for this one again, and I found it profoundly interesting that what he put forth, that we have individuals who perform or do the same crime, but there's an unfair sentencing of them, oftentimes are related to their race. Now, you would think as a Black man that I would know that, but I did not. And the fact that he has created an algorithm and a process that allows an attorney to be able to check sentencings of others who have done the same thing that their client do, so that they can argue for equal justice in sentencing, was phenomenal for me. I truly, truly enjoyed that. All right.
I was very impressed with that. That was impressive. Very impressive.
Absolutely. I think, Ms. Johnson, you mentioned it, eating and cooking healthy. Now, this one was eating and cooking healthy for the holidays, and we had Chef Amadeus on, and we had you've heard us mention a couple of times, Ms. Linda Lockett Brown, and the conversation was riveting. I remember Chef Amadeus talking to us about spices and things that you can do to substitute some of the negative things that we do as we prepare dinner for the holidays. And I'm here to tell you that after trying some of those things, to be pleasantly surprised. You know, so how we cook and what we eat has a great factor on our overall health. If Dr. Kane has said that once, he said it every show almost. So I just really felt that was very powerful for me. I truly got golden nuggets from it that I have now incorporated in my life. Does silence rob us of our history? Here again, Dr. Kane, this is a repeat of you, so I'm not going to go into any detail. But I will say to any listener, any viewer today, analyze and examine yourself. Are you taking the time to explain to educate, and introduce to your children, your relatives, the history of your family? The people who have overcome obstacles and strive for. That silence is so deeply ingrained in us that oftentimes we miss the boat, and we're surprised, or we're at wonder why our children don't understand these things. It is in our silence that we rob them of that knowledge. We here all agree that knowledge is power. So why would we, for any reason, deny our children that power? Dr. Kane, another one here you had, I think I paired with you on, is the benefits of funeral pre-planning. They always tell us there's only two sure things, and that's death and taxes. So to have someone on to really give us detailed information on the beauty and the advantages of doing the pre-planning, how it prepares us and we don't, and how it prevents us. Now, at that time, it was very interesting show. It's definitely one that I came from behind the scene, because out of college, one of my first jobs was selling pre-need insurance. So, of course, it was one of the things that I found very interesting as I learned the ropes. One of the things that went on in that conversation is the understanding that pre-planning, when I was doing it, it was primarily for older adults who were getting at a certain age, but the ones who only had one child. And they were concerned that upon their death, that one child was going to have challenge in managing all the things. So they wanted to prevent them from having that grief. Okay. And then gun violence, American epidemic. I was surprised that neither one of you had that on there. When you look at the number of murders that happen in America compared to any other country, the numbers are astronomical. And it is basically because of the fact that of gun theft, gun violence in America. So it is happening each and every day. In the last week, we had 2 to 3 shootings just here in Jacksonville. And Jacksonville is just a simple example. I am from East St. Louis, Illinois. And East St. Louis, Illinois, for throughout my history, was considered one of the most deadly cities per capita in the country. When I was in junior high school, they gathered all the young boys together and put us together in numbers of 5. And they went down, they said 3 out of the 5 of you will die before you're 18 years of age. And of that 3 out of 5, 1 of you will be shot. So that, of course, then struck a very, very important chord with me, made it possible for me to tune into that one. And then I think, again, Dr. Kane, it seems like great minds think alike. The impact of the Supreme Court ruling on affirmative action. Now, Dr. Kane, you had your take on this here. My take was a little bit different. I, though being in the baby boom generation, did not see as much with regards to affirmative action as when I was growing up. But listening to the show and the evidence put before me gave me an opportunity to reevaluate. I've always believed that there are different pockets in America and people grow up in bubbles, where my bubble was a predominantly Black community. Well, what good is affirmative action if everyone in the community is just like you? It's not until you travel outside of that community, till you get exposed to other things. Mind you, now I left East St. Louis, predominantly Black, and went to Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas, which was predominantly white. So that was an awesome episode for me and gave me an opportunity to truly look at it and look at it from the avenues and aspects that were presented forth. Some of the examples that you had given, Dr. King. So that is my list. There were many others that were close that I had to rule off. What I want to say to our listeners is, we keep a complete catalog of these shows. So if any time you've seen something on here that strikes your interest, go to Pause for the Truth and look at the previous episodes. You can watch the show in its entirety. You can read the correspondence, the comments, and all of the information pertaining to that. It's there, and we make that available because we believe the information is not only important, but it's timeless in its effort. So we want everyone to have an opportunity to be able to see that information. All right, Ms. Johnson.
While just looking back, it really shows over the past 2 years that we have touched on a lot of different topics. What I like to reflect on as or consider as the social determinants of health, because almost everything influences the outcome of our health. And obviously with the health education background, that's what I look at and think about the most. But it really lets us know that our job, and this is it's a job, an unpaid job. Our job is not over. There is still more conversations to take place, still more experts to bring on to enlighten us as well as our viewers. And we hope that this look back is a celebration for you as well. And just I can't believe they've been doing this for 2 years, for 100 episodes. As Dr. Kane and Tyrone said, that each week we do it because we want to, not because we have to. I think it is because we have to, because it is important and imperative that we share knowledge and information that we know. Dr. Kane and Tyrone, are you all ready to wrap it up this evening, our 100th episode, and look forward to 101 next week?
Yeah, I think we need to go on ahead and do that. We've held our audience, even though this time we didn't have an honor guest in terms of keeping the time, but we've held our audience up because we traditionally try to keep it to an hour. I know sometimes we go a little over thanks to somebody with a big mouth. But I think that we can go ahead and wrap it up, and because we're looking forward to people joining us in the future, as well as reviewing our past.
Yes, I think so. But now here are some things that I want everyone to know and want you to be prepared to look forward to. We've listened to feedback and information from our viewers. One of the things that you're going to see moving forward is the Black history, the movers and shakers with regards to what's going on in terms of history being made. Well, the other thing is we continuously heard feedback on, can we do more to give solutions? We do an excellent job of putting forth the quandary, the question, the idea, the concept. So can we do more in order to help people along with the solution? So that has been incorporated in the shows that will be coming next. So as we do this year, we're also under discussion as to whether or not to have a second hour that would include millennial speak. Wouldn't it be nice to hear us talk about the show and then have young folks give us their take on it? Because you see, one of the shows that we did was generational differences. And in listening to that show, I found it extremely powerful in understanding how easy and simple it is to let generational differences just continue to flourish. The simple thing is you have to engage, and you have to engage individuals where they are. Well, guess what? That is any age. If you come to a person and you have something you want to talk to them about, you have to engage. All right. And then finally, the other part that we have, Ms. Jocelyn, we've got the conclusion of our outro. We've got a beautiful intro that Ms. Jocelyn brings us into the show. And then we've worked and we've got an outro where Dr. Kane will also be taking us away and saying good night to our audience. So Miss Jocelyn normally ends the show that she give our guests an opportunity to have a closing thought. So I think it's only befitting that we do the same thing. And I'm not going to put anyone on the spot. I'm going to give my closing thoughts first. And my closing thoughts is simply this. There are three things that over this last 100 shows that I found to be very consistent. Number one, you, me, and everyone, all of our viewers, need to engage and get involved. Because as we start in this here next show, we're going to be giving you solutions. It's going to require you to get engaged. The second thing is to arm yourself with knowledge. One of the premise of this show is to bring on professionals. Dr. Kane knows a lot. Ms. Jocelyn knows more. And I'm just a guy who pushed the buttons in the background. But what we do is we go out of our way to find individuals who are professional and learned in the topic that we have. And so therefore, they are giving you the best information for that time. And then finally, the last thing is that this is not a speed race. It's not a sprint. If I had a nickel for every time someone says that in order to do this, you just got to get started. What did they tell us when we were talking about diet and health? Make small changes, and then continue to grow. So those are the things that I would like for our listeners to have as they listen to this, our 100 show.
Ms. Turner, I'm gonna deviate from the norm, and I'm gonna let you give yours.
I have none. I don't want to extend the show any longer. We've kind of taken our guests over a little bit long tonight.
All right. So I'll make mine pretty brief. I just want to thank everybody for giving us an opportunity to come into their home and to their world, listening to us on a regular basis. Please continue to listen to us. Just please get more engaged, because that's part of one of the solutions that we want to make sure that our community can move forward. Just get engaged and give us ideas on what we can do to make your life better and our community better. With that being said, I would like to thank my two co-hosts for, even though Tyrone was behind the scene, he's now co-host. Our two co-hosts for these 100 plus episodes that we have put together and come forth. We moved along. We progressed quite a bit, and we've gotten better over time, and we want to get even better. With our audience help, I think that will work. Listen to the outro. It can give us some information on it, and I very much look forward to expanding our show to include our younger folks, because they have ideas, and since they are the future, we have to have them come on and give us some of their ideas and thoughts.
All right.
We're grateful that you joined us today and hope that you gain valuable insights on our current topic. We look forward to having you with us next time as we explore trending issues in our community and discover ways to simplify life for you and your loved ones. Our dedicated panelists and staff are committed to sharing knowledge and serving our community. But now we need your support. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and spread this valuable knowledge to others. Don't forget to invite your family and friends to tune in our podcast every Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To stay connected, you can visit our website at www.pauseforthetruth.com. That's www.pauseforthetruth.com. And show your support by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter, and linking with us on LinkedIn. Most importantly, join us live on Facebook or YouTube every Tuesday night at 6:30 p.m. by simply visiting our website and selecting your preferred listening channel. Your feedback is invaluable to us. Feel free to email us with any questions, concerns, or comments about our podcast. We also welcome recommendations for future show topics that you feel are important So reach out to us at info@pauseforthetruth.com. I would also like to give thanks to our behind-the-scenes technology engineer, Mr. Tyrone Jackson, owner and operator of CallTyrone.net, which offers a full line of computer and technology services. Go to www.calltyrone.net for a complete list of services. Thank you again for being part of Pause for the Truth family. Together, we can make a positive impact on our community by sharing knowledge and empowering one another. This has been Dr. Rogers Kane, along with Ms. Jocelyn Turner, and again, Mr. Tyrone Jackson, wishing you a very good evening and good night.